How many people are usually attending right now?
20 to 30, just depends on the
Oh,
day.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
How did it go with Ben?
Oh, we had a lot of fun. I had Ben was my very first guest when I started this
Mm,
whole thing because it was kind of a COVID idea. It was like, oh, I have all these friends who are usually on set or they're flying around the world. So
hmm.
why don't I, get them now while I can get them because of COVID, because everybody was just at home. But Ben was my first interview because I could say, "Hey, can you do this tomorrow?"
Okay.
And but then I had him on recently because now Mutiny Pictures. So I'm gonna, yeah, we've let people in, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Filmmakers Life, and I want to. Oh, is it okay if I call you Sogo?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, because you have a fabulous name, which I would like you to say for us so that we hear how it's said correctly.
Well, it's pronounced Tsogtbayar. It's a Mongolian name, but I go by Tsogo for short. Um, Usually Mongolian names are long, but then we always would have nicknames or shortened names, so we call each other.
Right.
Sometimes we don't even know what's their real name is until we really need it.
There's a number of cultures that have that. I grew up with that. All my uncles have nicknames, and I have no idea what their real names are.
Exactly. Yeah.
We were just talking about the other day. So thank you so much for joining us, and thanks everybody for coming this morning. What I always like to start with, my first question I like to ask is, when did you first think, oh, I'm a filmmaker, I'm going to make films? When did that first come to you? Were you like 5 years old or 30 years old?
Um,
Start for you.
yeah. I was born in Sverdlovsk, formerly called Sverdlovsk. Now it's called Yekaterinburg of Russia. When my parents were students back then, and I grew up in Mongolia. My mother, she's a journalist. She was the head of Mongolian National TV, which was the only TV station back then, and it was the government TV station. And Mongolia used to be one of the socialist countries in Asia. So my my entire childhood was actually between going to school and then home, and most of the time at the TV station, because back then was everything was linear. So if you they didn't have much of a editing options. So if you made a mistake, or especially in a communist country, it was very strict. So if you just coughed during the interview, then they would have to do everything all over again. So 1 hour interview could take like maybe a whole day, or if you stutter, then it's a no-no for the government. So then you have to do everything all over again, start recording from the beginning. And I would just wait for my mom and then sleep there. And even I never entered national TV. It was actually one of the government protected um, secure area, but I never actually entered through the front door. I always entered through the fence, through the back doors where my mom's office were. And even the guard dogs knew who I was, and I would always have this treat with me in my pocket every time I go. So my childhood was actually around a lot of time with the art and um, film, and we would go. my brother and I, my parents would take us to movies, operas, plays. Every weekend we would do something. Um, um, so we were very much exposed to art, and I was gonna go follow my mom's career, become a journalist, but then just before I was doing the entry exam, I saw this commercial of this film school on TV, and then I said, okay, because at the time there were not many options for filmmaking, but it was a private school, and uh, they just started a new school, as I was right after the communism collapsed. So I saw this commercial and I said, that's who I want to be. And then I completely quit the journalism and went on to become a filmmaker. And I learned a lot. Then, because it was the first private school, they were able to get most of the masters from Mongolian old cinema. And the teachers were great. Yeah, and that's where I met my wife also. So we met, and then we moved to United States.
Is she
And as I'm sorry, go ahead.
is she a filmmaker as well? I didn't know that. Is your wife a filmmaker as well, or she studied?
No, she did not finish it because she got pregnant.
Ah!
Yeah, so she dropped out, and but she's a contortionist. So she teaches now, and she's been performing in most of the big circuses, Cirque du Soleil, Cirque Ingenue, and she traveled around the world. And now she teaches at the San Francisco Circus Center as head of contortion department, and she has her own contortion school called Mongolian Contortion Center in San Francisco.
Wow.
So yeah, so we moved to San Francisco, and then as a struggling immigrant with the kids and the family, I was doing some odd jobs here and there, and not really knowing what I could do, So then I was working for this company, but then when they closed it, I was working there for a long time, and when they, closed their door, I thought maybe I should just stop being a blue collar worker. I should go back to, because there's always this yearn that you want to create something, but then when you're doing 8-hour shift every day and trying to make a living, you're it fades a little bit. It fades a little bit, but it's always there. It's poking you from inside. And then
Sogo,
yeah,
Sogo, I
yeah,
think you can't hear me very well. I don't know if I can. I have to sort of shout to get you to hear me. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, just fine. Yeah.
So when you left film school and you
Hmm.
said you got a job, it wasn't anything to do with film. Is that what you mean? You were not in the industry anymore?
You mean when I left Mongolia?
No, when you said that you had this job and it was an 8-hour shift, it wasn't anything to do with film at all.
No, it was sales in a furniture store.
Right.
So yeah, so by the time then I had my own business, small business, doing remodeling of furnitures, from refinishing, from restoring old Japanese furnitures and selling it at higher price and those kind of things. But then when we closed, then I needed to go back to start what I really wanted to do all the time, the filmmaking.
Right.
So I went back to Mongolia, and then I reconnected with all my university friends, and by the time most of them were already on the field doing, some of them already did 5, 6 feature films and became known filmmakers in Mongolia.
Wow.
So I needed to go back and enter back into that society, filmmaking society. And then, a lot changed actually, because when digital came with the DV cameras,
That's right.
then it made it very much possible for independent filmmakers to make and create anything they want, because the negatives were expensive, right? And then
Yeah.
you would need to send it to Los Angeles to get it developed, and then you bring it back, and then you would have to have a spinning desk to edit, and you know
Yeah.
we used to edit on a VHS cassette tape with two VHS players,
Yeah.
play
Like,
it and stop it, and then cut it, and then scotch tape it. So
yep.
digital made it very easy and cost effective way to create
Right.
again
Right.
for the filmmakers. And nowadays, you can buy really, really, really high end cameras for $5,000, $6,000, and if you want to spend more, and you can actually invest for yourself, and you can just go out and create, and all the options are there out there. And with this fast development of digital era, it made it very it brought a big opportunity for independent filmmakers to start creating. Yeah, so that's when we started. So I went, and then I came back to San Francisco, and then I needed to catch up with the digital um, era. So I went and enrolled in at the San Francisco City College, and to my surprise, when I went to City College, I wasn't expecting much. I thought I just wanted to try it because it was really cheap for San Francisco residents, right?
Right. Right.
So, to my surprise, they were very well equipped, brand new Mac computers for the editing rooms, and hands-on experience from day one on
Yes.
cameras and lights. And I was super excited, and then bought myself um, a camera and editing station, and started experimenting and learned my way. And I founded a company, production small studio called Rice Pictures, with two of my friends, and then it became big, and we started making short films and
So,
commercials, music videos, and things like that.
Soga, what do you mean by it became big? I mean, that was like, that suddenly was like whoosh, in one go, whoosh, it became big. What do you mean by that?
Became big, meaning that we started getting paid. When we first
You did.
found it, it was more of a struggle to find a job,
Yeah.
find something to do. So
Yeah.
most of the time, inexperienced people, we would get offers to do anything, to do something for free, and
Yeah.
then we would just take it, just for the experience, just to build up our portfolio. We would just take it and then go out there and started doing it. So I I started shooting, I started editing, directing, even put up the lights. So you basically did everything by yourself. And yeah, so it became big, meaning that we started buying more cameras, more lights, and more editing stations, more people. We actually hired more people to write scripts,
You
and
get
suddenly we became 10 of us, like,
wow. How
yeah.
did you get paid? Were you making commercials, or what were you getting paid to do?
Yeah, we were getting paid to do music videos and corporate event and weddings and commercials, so those sort of things. And then less and less we would have this way to less and less we were making short films. Like ultimately, our goal is to make a feature film, right? To make a name for ourselves. But then less and less when the money was coming in, when the job was coming in, then you creating less of your own project. So here and there we would make short films, entered into festivals and that. But then
It's so interesting, that particular moment that you're talking about, because I find
mhm.
that that's one of the places a lot of filmmakers get stuck. They start
Yeah, so
out.
yeah, so we didn't want to get stuck there.
Right, right.
And also and then we decided to go separate ways, meaning that there
Oh,
was no more studios. And then we were asked to do to enter into we when we were working, there were some friends in the different studios doing different commercials, and then we would borrow different lenses from each other. And back then there was DV cameras or HVX cameras, so P2 cards were just coming in. It was a brand new thing, and we would need to make it look like a film, a cinema look. We would use optical lenses, and then we would need converters to put it into the cameras in order to use it and make it look like a film depth. Like digital would look like something, a video, something you would see on a TV station, but not like a film stock kind of look.
right.
So we were, within the circle, we would borrow lenses from each other, borrow cameras, and sometimes crew. If somebody needed more, we would lend it to one another. And then one time they said, we are competing in a short film competition. We need your help, because it was a timed film competition. So things went bad. They lost the one of the cinematographers in that group actually took off because he couldn't handle the pressure. So they asked us to help. So we went out there 4 o'clock in the morning, and then everything was a mess. The actors were angry because they haven't been fed for a long, long time.
My God. Oh
The
my.
director was uh, director was just sitting in this corner and almost crying, and the whole crew was all over the place. It was a big mess, and they completely stopped. They only had like 24 hours to finish the product. So we came in and I asked the director if if the people were fed, and he said no. And there were little kids there too, like 5, 7, and 9-year-old, 3 girls. So I went out and I went to the director and said, "Give me your credit card. I'm gonna order something." So we ordered pizza and then treats for the kids, and then took the kids out to a corner store, bought them ice cream, 7 o'clock in the morning, and and then everything went back. People started eating. When they're eating, they started chatting, and then so atmosphere came back. So
Right.
then we started shooting, and then we were able to finish it in time. And it was a lot of fun because there's a deadline, but this competition was within 48 hours. You're supposed to create short film,
Is that
and
is that the same competition that's still going on now?
yeah, it's called 48-hour film project.
8 hour, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a really really fun experience, and I was thinking, wow, this is really great. It was brand new, it's fresh. And then we went out to the screening and we saw the other films, and then was blown away by what people can create within 2 days.
Right, right.
And then when we asked, it was only $150 to enter, or $100. I don't remember exactly, but it was super cheap. And you know, oftentimes you create something, the budgets go up in 4 or 5 figures, but it was only $100 to enter and create whole film, right?
Yes, yes,
So when you're in school, you create short films, and then you build your portfolio. By the time you finish with it, you would have at least 10 short films for yourself, and the diploma or anything written is not gonna do you justice.
right.
Only what you have done is something you want to show people, have
Yeah.
them assess who you are and what you can do from your work,
And
right?
Sogo, many people leave film school and don't even have a short film. Many,
That's a big surprise to me, because
yeah,
even I was in a short period of time at City College, I created a lot of every week we would be creating short films.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even it's 1 minute, it doesn't matter. Sometimes 4, 5, 7 minutes. And yeah, so and then I really thought that idea was great, and then wanted to bring it to Mongolia, because Mongolia short film was not really a thing. It wasn't, because when I was in school, like you said, we never created a movie. First, it was very expensive, and then VHS was available at the time, so we would create something with the VHS, experiment, and that was it. And then after you finish, you go on and to create your own, but then most of the time it was feature films, feature length.
Yes,
And
yes,
then only a few people who graduated from Korea or China or United States, when they go back, they started introducing the short film thing. And
right.
then it was just coming out at the time, and people, were just introduced to it, and then the YouTube was just coming out also, and then people loved it on YouTube.
Right.
So then I wanted to bring that also to Mongolia, and then started doing it, and then people loved it.
Huh.
And from that competition, a lot of filmmakers were born. Also, they went on to make their feature films, and then became big friends, and actually put together a studio together. And So that's the whole idea behind filmmaking, right? It's a collaboration work,
Yeah.
collaboration of many different people.
It sounds
So
as though it sounds as though by bringing that competition, you were able to create that community in Mongolia and bring.
exactly. So, and then this 48-hour film project still goes on. It's originated from Washington, D.C. So, if you want to be a filmmaker, I highly encourage you to find out about it and then go on and compete in there. And right now, it's a difficult time. In the whole world is affected. I'm sure, if not physical, they're doing something virtual. And yeah, so then we then we started creating movies, and then we needed something, um, needed to go out there, not just Mongolia, go out there, introduce our movies to the rest of the world. What we create, because there were only like just a handful of people who would go to who would have this connections with international people and use their connections to go out to film festivals and get exposed to international filmmaking. So we needed something like that for Mongolian films, for the filmmakers who didn't have those connections and couldn't speak the language. So we founded this company called Mongol Films Distribution. So we started bringing, going to different markets like Cannes International Film Festival. Most of the big festivals, they would have um, uh, film markets next to them, or sometimes they would have their own standalone film market, like American Film Market in Santa Monica every November. So it was then it became a brand new field for us, right? Something we need to find out. And then I was researching, and then I found this book called "How to How to American Film Market." I don't remember the exact name, but it was written by
Benyani,
uh,
yes, yes.
Ben Yenny, called. Do you remember the name, Joanna?
I
I
don't
don't remember the exact name.
basically like something like the filmmaker's guide to the American film market.
Exactly. Yeah, something like that. So I read it. It was very informative, and I thought it was a really, really well done book. So I looked up Ben. He happened to be in San Francisco. So I called him up, and then I called him up, and we set up a schedule for lunch. So we met and we talked. So American Film Market was our very first market um, that we attended for to introduce Mongolian films to international market. And we hired Ben that year, and as a consultant, and we went out there. It was a completely new world, like there were so many movies because people usually know and look at the filmmaking world through, most of the people look at it like a Hollywood, right?
Uh-huh, yeah.
People judge the whole film industry with Hollywood movies. But then there's a whole different world out there in the filmmaking, in the film festivals. Those movies, normal people would probably never get to watch. Maybe it was because of the way it's distributed, or maybe it's because of because of the interest that it brings to the general public. Um,
What?
and then there are a lot of movies independently made by independent filmmakers who, which gets this limited theatrical exposure, but then it goes on to, DVD sales and VOD platform sales. So there were thousands and thousands of movies were being created.
That first time that you went to the American film market and you were
Mhm.
working with Ben, what were your goals? What were you trying to achieve at the AFM?
Our goal was to penetrate international market and get the Mongolian films out there in the world and tell the world that we Mongolians also can make a good movie,
Right?
and wanted to share our stories with the rest of the world.
How
But
many?
the only way was to go through festivals, and festival
No.
wasn't the only way. So we found out through the markets, through the distributors, through the buyers, we can reach the whole world. So
Right. That first time, how many films did you have? That first time that you went to, how many films were you representing?
at the time, I had 11 movies
Oh,
when we
wow.
started. Um, five five of them were I was involved as an executive producer. The others were acquisitions we contracted from the filmmakers. So so we became a sales agent, right,
Right.
for the films,
Yes.
and it was an eye-opening experience and something we never expected. Like I said, I was blown away with how many movies were you know, being made throughout the world and exchanging hands, and how many deals were made. We didn't make any sales that year.
Really?
At that, yeah, we didn't make anything because people. So the thing is, when we went out there, we were the first, and then people, aside from Mongolia can make movies, they didn't even know where Mongolia was,
Right, right.
what Mongolia is. So I was telling them this is a big country, land to person ratio. We are the first in the world, and
Wow.
land wise, land size wise, we are the 17th in the world out of 200 and something, 100 and 200 territories.
Yeah. Big.
And yeah, it's a big market. And then Mongolia actually has a filmmaking history, dates back to 1939, 80 plus years of filmmaking. And, people didn't know. So we had to educate the buyers.
Yes.
And it's a brand new language for buyers, brand new, um, people thought it was, some people came in and said, yeah, another movie, another territory trying to do something, and then just leave. And others would come and get super excited about our quality of the movies and the storytellings. And yeah, but nothing was done. And then now we have Mongolian movies everywhere. Um, if you go on to Amazon and type Mongol Films Distribution, you would find all our movies. And then we recently closed a deal with two distribution agency in United States, and our films are being dubbed in English and being sold, distributed through all the major platforms and DVDs in Walmarts and Redboxes, and too much to probably to your surprise, DVD sales are still big. It just shifted, like it's not traditional way anymore, meaning it's not a physical DVD that's being sold at the store. Only things are only physical. We call it traditional DVD. Traditional ones are sold. It's still being sold, but it's not as big as in the old days, like
Right.
during the blockbuster area, right? But then there's MOD, which is you place an order. That's when they manufacture and send it, shipped it to
On
you,
demand.
to your door. Yeah, but it's still big. It's making half of your second market revenue is being made in the United States, being made from DVD sales,
Wow.
DVD and Blu-ray sales. Yeah.
And how,
Second market meaning it's first market is cinema release in theatrical. Second market is the one that's TV, DVD, VOD platforms, and SWAT like Netflix and Hulu.
how many films do you have now? So you started out with 11 that first year.
Hmm.
How many do you have now?
We have close to 80 movies now.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
then
what have you learned about the different markets? Like, what have you learned about which countries or which territories like your films the most? And then what is the kind of content that people like the most? What have you learned about that?
the territory is very hard to say because it depends on the genre of the movie. If it's like a popular genre like action or epic or horror, then it does well everywhere. Everybody wants to buy it because
Yes.
that's the genre that's for sure make their money back.
Mm.
And like if it's a drama or somewhat action or thriller, those kind of movies, it's really hard to say. The easiest market is probably the United States because
Huh.
it's easier to go in and you can actually make it available everywhere. And a lot of filmmakers they do self-distribution using Amazon, utilizing Amazon and YouTube and Vimeo, and they can self-distribute. And but in Asia, a lot of territories they have censorship issue, and especially China, they have quotas for every year, and then you would have to have a really good movie that's done well, or have a big star in it, or and then you on top of that you would have to have a distribution agent that will represent your movie. And
Yeah, with China. Yeah.
China has a lot of middlemen. So when we go to markets, you would probably meet like minimum 20 buyers from China, but they are not really buyers. They are the middlemen. They would take the information of your movie and then pitch it back in China. And if they get lucky, and then sometimes they actually buy a movie and try to make it, it's a risk take for them most of the time. It's a risk take for everybody. It's like a gamble, like you're hoping if you have this genre, if you have this movie, then you hoping you can make that money. You can make your projection, that kind of.
What has so far been your most successful film?
Uh, most successful one was used to be 10 Soldiers of Genghis Khan. It's also called Araft, also called Genghis Khan, The Legend of 10. So every territory they have the rights, or we give them a rights to repackage or rename
Oh,
the
okay.
movie for their territory. So it's Araft in Mongolia and Araft in Russia, but then Legend, Genghis Khan, Legend of 10 with the rest of the world, and 10 Soldiers of Genghis Khan in the United States and Germany, and so it's everywhere. But then now we have a new movie called The Legend of Gobi, which is also an epic movie. It will be coming out soon in the United States with the dubbed version. And we sold that movie to pretty much every territories. And there's another one called Marked Man, aka The Warlord. It's a war movie. It's actually available on most of the platforms, and available at Walmart DVD section with the dubbed version, and it's sold in Germany, most of the Europe, Southeast Asia, and India. So
I think that filmmakers probably don't realize, and I just realized I wanted to stop about this, that Walmart and Redbox is a huge victory for a film. To get a sale on Walmart and Redbox, that's a big deal. And I suspect a lot of filmmakers are not even shopping at Walmart or Redbox. But what does that do to help the sales of your film when you can actually get to one of those or both of those?
well, U.S. distributors, they some of them they have a direct deal with Walmart, and then Walmart actually deals with a few, not many, but few distributors to acquire their DVDs and sell it at their store. But once it's sold, it's nationwide, meaning
Yeah,
over 2,000, 3,000 stores. That's a lot of DVDs, and people still collecting DVDs and actually buying DVDs.
yep,
And the only downside for international movies like ourselves is that it has to be in English. And Redbox also, it only takes English language movies.
yes,
And sometimes they accept dubbed, but most of the time, if it's not good dubbed, they wouldn't take it. If the movie is not good, they wouldn't take it. So United States, there are a lot of places where we cannot still penetrate, like a lot of TV channels like Hallmark or Life. Those things, they only accept original English language movies.
yes, yes. Uh-huh,
So
uh-huh.
there's no market for independent movies with subtitles. But then, Bong Joon-ho's Parasite won the
Yeah,
Oscars. They won, actually won everything,
every
Cannes, Busan,
yes.
and now it won Asian Academy Awards just last month.
Oh,
So yeah, so it won everything, and then I loved his speech where he said, if you can get over that 2-inch barrier, 1-inch barrier of subtitle, you will
yes.
be introduced to a whole different world out there.
Yeah.
I think that particular word was directed to Americans, probably.
Yeah.
because Americans are the only one who can only speak one language and would be able to communicate everywhere.
English people as well. English people can only speak one language.
Well, they're actually part of a Europe, so in Europe, a lot of people speak a lot of languages,
Yes,
at
yes.
least three language. It's like given.
And what's the
Uh,
difference in the costs of subtitling and dubbing? What's the difference in the costs there for each film?
well, there are a lot of ways you can localize, meaning that you make it available for your own territory audience, and subtitle meaning you can put written words. It's not a closed captioning. Closed captioning is also different. Closed captioning is towards people with hearing disability. So it will tell you, the closed captioning would tell you sad music playing, or like people walking and car just came to stop, or gunshot, and those kind of information for people who cannot hear. Subtitle is just a translation of said dialogues on the
Dialogue.
screen.
Yes.
So any dialogue is, spoken, then subtitle would be translated in the native language. There's a dubbing and voiceover, two different things. Um, Voiceover is usually done for movies that doesn't have M&E tracks. M&E stands for music and effects. So what happens is when you create the movie, you need to create this file called M&E, music and effects. So if you take that file and give it to, let's say, in Germany, and German, it's mandatory to dub or voice over any movie in German language in
Oh,
order for them to distribute. So they would they would put the music and effects and with their German spoken dialogues, and then they would have German speaking movie. Voiceover is something where M&E is not available, so they would lower the volume of spoken dialogues and then put their own, and it's usually not as clean. Dubbing usually is very clean, and if there's five characters, there would be five different voices.
right.
And even big studios like the major studios, their requirement is someone who has the same color uh, tone, tone of a voice. So then it would sound like Robert De Niro speaking, but in German or in French or in, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's one of the requirements for that. So the funny thing is that when Friends became very popular, and when Friends cast went to Japan the first time, every time Jennifer Aniston speaks, people were laughing, like, hee, 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 hee. And then she was surprised why people were laughing, but then they never heard um,
Uh-huh.
her speak. They only heard her speak in Japanese language, and
Yes.
then the language, the voice in Japan was different than Aniston's voice, I guess. So
They knew the Japanese actor's voice rather than Jennifer Aniston's voice.
exactly. So they found it very surprising when she was speaking in her own voice. So that happens a lot.
Yeah, when I was living in Spain, E.T. came out. This is like years ago. E.T. came out.
Hmm.
So I saw all the films in Spanish, and so I came back to America, and people were quoting from E.T. and I'm like, what are they talking about? And then I realized it was because I heard E.T. say, Mi casa, telefono, mi casa.
Ah,
I didn't know the lines in English.
yeah,
Well,
ET, go home, your phone home.
telefono, mi casa. So I'm going to open it up for questions and see if anybody has any questions.
Sure.
Sometimes we have people who are brave enough to jump on and ask a question. If you can raise your hand so I can see you, that would be really great. And it might be a quiet day. Might be a quiet day. Is anyone brave enough to ask a question? Yes, Diane. Go ahead.
Hello.
Come to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I, um, I find it really fascinating because I know I often, as much as I enjoy international cinema, when I think of Mongolia, I have very specific images.
Mm.
And so I just, yeah, it's, I love it. I mean, I do feel that film is an international language, but I guess I'm most interested, like, did you see yourself doing what you're doing right now when you started out working in film? Is it still, is this, and what is your favorite part of all of this? I mean, what do you find most intriguing
Mm.
about distribution? Because it just, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You're right. When I first, like I said, I needed to educate people about Mongolia, but then their um, stereotype of Mongolia was only two things: horses and Genghis Khan.
right,
Right? They didn't
exactly.
know anything else. So we told them we have, different things. It's a contemporary, metropolitan city with neon lights and shops and hotels and bars. So we have movies that shows that, and surprises a lot of people. And yeah, and then I always knew what I wanted to do when I first wanted to be to get involved in filmmaking, and um, this was all part of my plan, right? To become a salesperson, to become an agent, to represent Mongolia to the rest of the world. And then now we're going the other way, meaning we are bringing foreign language movies to Mongolian market, and that's something I always knew and wanted to do, and it was really planned out, and I'm slowly achieving it, and I'm hoping. And when the time is right, I want to direct my own movie because I always been producing, but my dream is one day to direct my own. And now I'm only building uh, and building it up to that right moment, I would say.
What kind of movie is that going to be when you direct? What kind of movie is it going to be?
That's a secret. It's in my head.
It's only us. It's only us. Jota first and then Clemencia. Thank you for raising your hand. Jota, did you go away? I saw you had raised your hand before.
No, yeah, thank you, Joanne. No,
There
I'm
you are.
here. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Producer. I basically wanted to ask you about Link TV, if you have any connections to Link TV, because I watch Link TV and I remember seeing a special there of rappers in Mongolia. It's a show about music.
Mm,
And so they were showing that they're rappers, and so it was interesting. It was very interesting. So, and then also, have you explored the Latin American market? How does that, like Mexico, Brazil, and different countries down in South America? How is that for distribution? That's my question. Thank you
mm.
for being here.
Yeah. Link TV, we haven't sold anything to Link TV yet. but we are not the only one making movies in Mongolia, right? There are a lot of filmmakers out there making movies for themselves, and especially a lot of foreigners actually coming to Mongolia and making movies with their perspective of Mongolia. Like Eagle Huntress was a big hit in independent world, and everybody talked about it. It circulated in a film festival circulation for a long time, and yeah, Genghis Blues was another one, but Genghis Blues was a long time ago. So like those, like Genghis Blues was done by two filmmakers, and they went out there and just started shooting a lot of footages on DV camera, and came back home with 200 DV cassette tapes and started editing and made the movie. Like Eagle Huntress went out there and made a movie, but then it's a documentary, right?
Yes.
The Eagle Huntress actually raised a lot of issues, controversial issues, because the story told was not completely true. So Mongolian people did not receive it well. It's and as for Latin America, it's a market where films either need to be dubbed or original content they require within the Latin America. So we are well, through Amazon and other platforms, it's open to Latin America, most of the countries in Latin America. But to directly distribute it to them, it needs to have that set M&E tracks, and then needs to be dubbed also in Spanish or Portuguese language. So yeah, we're working on it, and I think that is in the near future.
Thank you, Jota. Clemencia, you need to unmute yourself, Clemencia. Did I just put you back on? Sorry, I won't touch anything. Not touching anything. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for talking with us today. You mentioned that when you decided to start and get back into film and have that passion that you had kind of hidden for a while, you started to do short films, and makes sense. So I wanted to ask you, what kind of short films did you begin doing? You know, what were your subject matters, and how long were those films?
Well, first we were doing just friends sitting around and then throwing ideas, and then we brainstormed, and we made my idea. Next, we made next friend's idea, and then the next friend's idea. So we were helping each other and creating their own ideas. And then later on, we made movies. Became longer in length, like 20 minutes or so. First, it was short, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And I think more you create, better you become at it. It's just something you always need to create. I mean, I love to quote Quentin Tarantino's words that he said, if you can afford to go to school, you can afford a camera. Buy a camera, go out, make a film. It will teach you more than the school. So that's what he said, and I love it, because I'm not saying he's telling you not to go to school. It's just saying that
Just do it.
doing it will teach you more. It's that's why I love that quote. Yeah.
And I always like to say that one of my favorite films of all time was a 1 minute film I saw 15 years ago at Sundance.
Hmm.
1 minute film shot on 16 millimeter, one joke, beautifully done, in, out, boom. It was so good.
Yeah, the short film, the way it's built is same. It has a beginning, has the climax, it has the ending.
Yep.
You know, sometimes you watch 4 or 5 minute short, and then you know it just feels like you watched the entire movie, like 90-minute long movie. Sometimes you watch 90-minute movie, and then you know you get very little information, or sometimes you want it just to end. You know, like so. It's a short film. If it's done well, it will give you a lot of. It can give you a lot of information, and it's
Be very satisfying, I think.
yeah, exactly.
We're over time, so I want to be very careful with your time. But Chris has had his hand up for a while. If you want to ask, and Lenzo has a question.
Sure.
But you can go whenever you want. So Chris, go ahead. So good to see
Okay.
you. It's been so long.
I'm sitting right in front of my TV set, and I put on the menu for Amazon, looked up Mongolian movies, and I have a menu of things in front of me. Can you recommend 2 or 3 movies to watch?
Yes, good question.
What genre, what type of movie do you like? What do you
I like
normally
adventure
watch?
with exotic location.
Adventure with exotic location. Well, I recommend you watch. Start with the 10 Soldiers of Genghis Khan.
Okay, it's on here.
Yeah, it should be there. And then if you like good story, I suggest you One Life of Two Women. It's a very well done thriller.
Ooh, my favorite.
Yeah, and yeah, if you like exotic and culture, try Yellow Cult. I'm not sure if it's out there or not, but Yellow Cult is something I would recommend. And
Oh, what's the last word, Sogo?
Yellow Cult,
CULT?
COLT, like cult
Oh,
is in baby horse.
Baby horse. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you. Okay, let's fit in one
And
last.
then, oh yeah, I forgot Sodura. It's Sodura. Expecting Stranger is the name. Sodura, Expecting Stranger. It's a kind of a fantasy, but it's based on reindeer people in Taga of Mongolia. It's a well done movie also.
thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Enjoy, Chris.
Lenzo, what's your question? That'll be the last one for today. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi. I have
Uh-oh.
it's kind of a long question. My grandma is actually Manchurian, and that's why I was like so excited to see your name. And but my question is, I'm actually, the history of Manchuria is very like mixed with Mongolian and Chinese, and I've been watching this series on sort of like the Emperor series, and there's a lot of Mongolian that I feel like is being erased. And so my question is like, there, like, we see that in the United States a lot of times, where a lot of cultures are erased from certain histories or rewritten. And like, from my own research of my own grandmother and my grandmother's language, so much of it is Mongolian. And do you see, like, in the future, if there would ever be a collaboration of more of that language? Because the series that I'm watching, it's so specifically Chinese, and it seems like they caricaturize people Chinese. And every time I look at it, I'm like, I don't really think that they would speak this way and that they would act this way. So that's just it's a pretty long question, but I just wanted
No, no,
to.
no. I love the story. I love the question actually, because
Yeah.
it's something that a lot of people who don't know the history
Yeah.
just ignores it. It's hard to blame the Chinese too, because it's just a few people. It's the government. It's a very deliberate thing from the government to brainwash its citizens. Even in the academic book, they erased the complete history of Manchuria,
Yeah.
and they include Mongolia as part of China.
Yeah.
So it's hard to debate with people who grew up in China, because that's how they were taught in school. So it's they have very closed off to the rest of the world through their firewall. So it's hard to blame them. But with the educated people, it's easier, because Manchuria was a nation that came up strong, and then colonized China for 500 years, and it colonized Mongolia for 227 years. So when the revolution broke, China took back China, and Mongolia took back Mongolia, but then Chinese never always thought, Mongolia, because under the Manchurian rules, if China takes over, China should be controlling what Manchuria used to control. And so it's always a big controversial issue. But you're right, in the culture-wise, Manchurians were more towards Mongolian than the Chinese.
Yeah.
Even their writing and the language was more adapted to Mongolian than Chinese. They never used Chinese characters. They used the script, actual letters, alphabetical letter, called Uyghur Mongol writing. Its root comes from Turkic language root.
Mm.
So it's written from up and down in letters, not characters, like from top to bottom. The Manchurians actually used that, and the costumes and they wore, and then that long hair with the shaved off front. It's actually Manchurian. It's not Chinese culture.
Yeah.
So Chinese made everything Manchuria Chinese, and it's one nation that was wiped off of this world completely. Became extinct. But I'm glad you call yourself a descendant of Manchuria. So,
Thank you.
yeah,
I do feel kind of extinct. So sometimes I'm like
yeah.
looking so much for the last, the only thing I can find are just like museum things, and now I'm American. So it's
Yeah.
even harder to find. But for me as a filmmaker, and an artist, I'm still like looking for that ancestry, because I for some reason, my intuition, when I see what's being displayed as Manchurian, I don't recognize it. But then when I go to the museums and I see the writing and some of the other traditions that I'm looking up, like that seems to make sense. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank
look
you.
up a Mongolian old script,
Yeah.
Uyghur Mongol.
How do
You
you
will
spell that?
see.
Oh, sorry.
I just write Mongolian old script.
Okay.
Uyghur is Uigad. No, GIR.
Okay.
Uyghur Mongol.
Okay.
You will see the similarity of Manchurian, and it's a language that's extinct. But then the story is is 227 years of Mongolian history. So filmmakers actually make movies with Mongolians actually, rising up against Manchurian officials, and in that they wanted to make it as authentic as possible. So they didn't make them speak Chinese; they made them speak Manchurian, and then they consulted with historians specialized in Manchurian culture history. The language was completely different than Chinese. It was it was more closer to Mongolian than Chinese. Yeah.
And Lenzo, I want to say, firstly, you are not extinct.
Thank you. That's okay.
To me, filmmaking is the most powerful way that we can tell those stories that obviously you want to tell and need to tell, and
Yeah.
we need to hear, right? We need to hear those stories that you want to carry forward from your grandmother or whatever, however that is done. So, yeah, and
Thank you.
you are not extinct. Your voice is definitely not extinct. Thank you so much, Sogo, for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome, Joanna. Thank you for inviting.
And I got to learn a lot more about you now.
Yeah.
Now I know
Well,
that.
I always came and supported you, but I never shared my things. But now
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Yeah, Sogo is a Bay Area hero. So when we're out of COVID, you'll get to see him around in San Francisco. So, but thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, Sogo.